This is macOS Ken.
Chatter about production cuts, Apple Card cost Goldman and Apple, and the real Apple Intelligence Fund begins to begin. It is Thursday, the 24th of October, 2024. I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from macOS Ken, brought to you by yours truly and sponsored by Incogni, helping you take back your personal data. Get 60% off an annual plan with code macOSKen at incogni.com/macOSKen. This show is also sponsored by 1Password Extended Access Management. There is the way you want your business to run, and the way people actually do things. Decisions they make, shortcuts they take, and ways to do things faster and more efficiently. Props for the ingenuity, unless they're compromising your security, using unmanaged devices, apps IT doesn't know about, and IDs that should have been deactivated a long time ago. 1Password Extended Access Management can help you handle all of that. It puts all those unmanaged devices, unknown applications, and rogue identities under your control, making sure every user credential is strong and protected, every device is known and healthy, and every app is visible. 1Password Extended Access Management solves the problems traditional identity and access management and mobile device management miss. It is security for the way people work today. It's available now to companies with Okta and Microsoft Entra and in beta for Google Workspace customers. Check it out at onepassword.com/macOSKen. That is the number 1, onepassword.com/macOSKen. If you're wondering why Apple shares were down about $5 on Wednesday, there is really no shortage of possible contributing factors. First, almost everything was down midweek, with the Dow off about 410 points and the Nasdaq down close to 300. Yes, Apple contributes to those drops, but those contribute to Apple's drop, and round and down we go. A CNBC piece cited the E. coli outbreak at McDonald's and concerns around the upcoming U.S. election as two of the many things that negatively affected the markets. That said, there were plenty of bad tidings for Apple specifically. Over on Medium, TF International analyst Ming-Chi hit with word he says he's heard from Apple's supply chain. According to his headline, orders for iPhone 16 have been cut by 10 million units for the rest of this year and the first half of next year. Even his bad news came with good, though. First, most of those cuts were for the consumer end of the line, with orders for the Pro phones unchanged. Second, iPhone SE mass production will start in December of this year, according to the analyst, with production of around 8.6 million units from December to the first quarter of 2025 expected. Hey, that makes up most of the 10 million he says were cut, doesn't it? Also, and don't tell him I said this, you could be wrong about the 10 million. And what of sales generated by Apple Intelligence? He doesn't see those moving the needle much in the near term. Quoting his post, Apple's recent order cut suggests this optimistic expectation may not materialize in the short term. I believe that Apple is best positioned to succeed in on-device AI, and I am confident about the long-term potential for Apple Intelligence to become a popular paid service. However, significant growth in iPhone shipments will likely require further hardware innovation to accompany this AI development. So put that in the pile of stuff that may have knocked Apple shares on Wednesday. Slide it in next to the Apple Card thing. I told you yesterday that the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, or CFPB, was on the verge of fining Goldman Sachs over Apple Card issues. Turns out Goldman Sachs isn't the only company putting out Apple Card. I guess Apple might have something to do with it. Mac Rumors ran a piece Wednesday saying the CFPB had fined the bank and the tech firm a combined $90 million Now, if you listen closely, you can hear Apple alone generating $90 million in revenue over the course of this sentence, but it still looks ugly. MacRumor says the two firms were fined for Apple Card failures related to customer service breakdowns and misrepresentations. According to the report, the CFPB found that Apple and Goldman Sachs violated the U.S. Consumer Financial Protection Act and the U.S. Truth in Lending Act by mishandling transaction disputes and misleading iPhone users about interest-free payment options available when purchasing Apple devices with the Apple Card. These failures impacted hundreds of thousands of Apple Card users, according to the agency. Some of it does sound pretty messed up. Summarizing some of the CFPB findings: failure to process or share consumer disputes. When there were disputes, Apple had cardholders hit the Report an Issue feature in Apple Wallet. If they needed more information, Apple sent consumers a separate link in the Messages app, with which, at least sometimes, they apparently did nothing. They didn't send the additional info to the bank, according to the Bureau, even when Goldman Sachs told Apple it wasn't getting the additional information. So nobody investigated tens of thousands of such disputes, and cardholders were unfairly held responsible for disputed transactions, according to the Bureau. Failure to investigate cardholder disputes. I know, sounds like the same thing, but it's not. When Apple did send the additional information, Goldman Sachs didn't always follow up in a timely fashion, like not reaching resolutions within 90 days, often enough to make it a thing. These failures led to Goldman Sachs illegally placing damaging information on consumers' credit reports, according to the Bureau, and holding cardholders responsible for potentially fraudulent or unauthorized purchases. Misleading cardholders about a payment plan for iPhones and other Apple products. Basically, cardholders thought that they were automatically enrolled in interest-free financing when buying Apple gear from Apple with their Apple Card. Thing is, they weren't. According to the Bureau, consumers face confusing checkout options about enrolling in the plan. For online purchases, Apple only presented the payment plan as an option to consumers using Apple's own Safari browser. Due to Apple and Goldman's actions, instead of making interest-free payments, thousands of cardholders purchased Apple devices on interest-bearing revolving balances and incurred interest charges. And finally, misleading cardholders about refunds. Sometimes there were cardholders who did get the interest-free offer on Apple gear and who did need a refund from Goldman Sachs. While those refunds were supposed to go to the interest-bearing charges on Apple Card, in over 10,000 cases, Goldman put the refund on the interest-free balance, leaving the interest-bearing balance higher, leading consumers to additional and unexpected interest expenses. For all of that, Apple has to pay $25 million, which they have no doubt made many times over in the last 10 minutes. Goldman takes the harder hit. Not only does the bank have to pay close to $20 million in redress to impacted consumers, it also owes a fine of $45 million. If you will allow me a moment, this just sounds like growing pains, at least on Apple's part. They went into a market in which they had never played and tried to make something better. That said, it sounds like some individuals were seriously negatively impacted, and for that, somebody should pay. And good that a couple of somebodies are. Apple's response seems to land there, though perhaps a bit defensively. In a statement, the company said Apple is committed to providing consumers with fair and transparent financial products. Apple Card is one of the most consumer-friendly credit cards available and was specifically designed to support users' financial health. Upon learning about these inadvertent issues years ago, Apple worked closely with Goldman Sachs to quickly address them and help impacted customers. While we strongly disagree with the CFPB's characterization of Apple's conduct, we have aligned with them on an agreement. We look forward to continuing to deliver a great experience for our Apple Card customers. There was one more negative headline. If you chose to write it or read it negatively, A report from The Information indicates that, well, really there are two ways to say it. One can say Apple might stop production of its Vision Pro headset in the next couple of months, or one could say Apple is winding down that production. One sounds drastic, the other sounds kind of cash. It really is just the headlines that are bad. A write-up from Mac Rumors under the scary headline, Report, Apple may stop producing Vision Pro by the end of 2024 sounds pretty measured when it says, citing multiple people directly involved in making components for the headset, the report says the scaling back of production began in the early summer. This indicates that Apple now has a sufficient number of Vision Pro units in its inventory to meet demand for the device's remaining lifespan through to next year. I gotta give props to 9to5Mac, though, for conveying that sentiment in its headline for its story. That one said, Vision Pro reaches expected production target as Apple shifts supply chain focus. Way to go, Chance Miller. According to his piece, Apple suppliers have reportedly made enough components for roughly 600,000 headsets, which is in line with the initial estimates for 2024 shipments. Neither piece has Apple abandoning the spatial computer space. In fact, both have the company working on a couple of successor devices, one that would apparently be a less expensive version of what's out there now, and another, presumably in the same high price range, with an M5 processor and access to Apple Intelligence. More news in a moment, but first a word from macOS Ken sponsor, Incogni, taking your personal data back for you. 181. That is the number of data broker removal requests Incogni sent out for me in the first 10 minutes. In the first hour, 87 data brokers had checked and confirmed that they were now not holding my data, while 21 had added me to their suppression list, meaning they will never recollect any personal information that could be associated with me. The Incogni dashboard says it has saved me over 65 hours based on how long it would take me to submit each request individually, but it saved me more than that. Since it knew where to go, it will address any objections the data brokers have, and it will keep doing it. Yes, 21 have said that they'll never do it again, but Incogni is keeping an eye on close to 200 of them for me. Looking out for me. I made an account, answered a few questions. They did and continue to do the rest. To say I'm a fan would be putting it mildly. Whether you're trying to cut down on spam, scrub online activity, or guard against identity theft, Incogni is ready to work with you and for you. Take your personal data back with Incogni. Get 60% off an annual plan with code MacOSKen at incogni.com/MacOSKen. That is a big savings, and it comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. INCOGNI. Get 60% off an annual plan with code MacOSKen at incogni.com/MacOSKen. While the general public won't get its first taste of Apple Intelligence features until next week, the fun ones are now in the hands of developers, as are the tools to tweak them. Engadget had Apple seeding new betas of iOS 18.2, iPadOS 18.2, and macOS Sequoia 15.2 to developers on Wednesday, and there is where the fun begins to begin. The piece says Genmoji, Image Playground, and Image Wand are up and running in the betas. As for the tools to tweak them, a piece from TechCrunch says the Cupertino company made available APIs for 3 key Apple Intelligence features: Writing Tools API, Genmoji API, and Image Playground API. The piece says the APIs are designed to help developers integrate Apple's small model approach to generative AI into their applications, which all sounds really fun, once they're done doing cool stuff with it. As big a deal in the long run, though not as fun and sexy. TechCrunch says Wednesday's developer updates also expand language localizations, still only for English, though. In addition to US English, Apple has added Australian, Canadian, New Zealand, South African, and UK localizations. Less on the constructive side, more on the destructive, something people in the EU have been waiting for. Okay, something regulators in the EU have been waiting for. A piece from Mac Rumors says iOS 18.2 lets users start yeeting pre-installed apps. According to the site, iPhone users in the European Union can fully delete a number of core apps, including the App Store, Safari, Messages, Camera, and Photos. Folks who change their mind will be able to download those apps again and again. This is an EU-only thing. In the US and other countries, Mac Rumor says core apps like Photos and the App Store can be hidden, but not removed entirely. Word of another apparent quick fix release candidate. I told you yesterday of Apple releasing a second RC of visionOS 2.1 just a day after the first one hit. Now a piece from Apple Insider says the Cupertino company has released a second release candidate of tvOS 18.1 just 2 days after the first one. The build number has changed, otherwise the site can't say what's different about the second versus the first. Probably bug fixes and quality of life improvements, according to the report. Add another state slipping IDs into Apple Wallet. Apple Insider says folks from Iowa can now add their driver's license or state ID to Apple Wallet for use at TSA checkpoints, venues, and businesses. Maybe. They can add the IDs, though the piece says Apple Insider and many state departments of transportation do want to remind you that a digital ID does not replace your physical license or identification card. Many locations will still require you to present a physical ID card, so it's wise to still carry it whenever you can. That said, the Iowa Department of Transportation indicates that businesses can accept digital IDs through iOS apps like Tap to ID Mobile, Veriscan, and Mobile ID Verify. It is still wise to carry your physical ID whenever you can, though. And finally today, almost nobody's going to see this, so probably not going to matter. But PR from Apple TV Plus took a questionable tack on Wednesday. The Cupertino streamer issued a press release promoting the second season of the dystopian workplace drama Severance. It came under the headline, Notice of Return to Office for All Lumen Employees on Friday, the 17th of January, 2025. See, it's funny because return to office is funny. I haven't worked away from home since before the Obama administration, but I will say I can read a paper, by which I mean stories on news sites. The pandemic made millions of people work from home. Turns out some liked it and kind of pushed back on the idea of going back to commutes and suits and all the stuff they had accepted as just the way things were before things couldn't be that way. While not grabbing as many headlines, it is still a point of contention between management and staff running right through to today. So I kind of wonder about the comedy of issuing a return to office memo advertising a show about a workplace that literally strips you of your identity. That said, it's a good show, it's got a teaser, and it is creepy as. You can catch that now on YouTube. Everybody's back. Adam Scott, Britt Lauer, Tremel Tillman, Zach Cherry, Jen Tulloch, Michael Chernus, Dyken Lockman, John Turturro, Christopher Walken, and Patricia Arquette. Still executive produced by Ben Stiller, who directs 5 of Season 2's 10 episodes. Severance starts again with 1 episode on the 17th of January. Ironically, you don't have to go anywhere to watch it. You just need to be subscribed to Apple TV+. macOS Ken, brought to you by me, and sponsored by 1Password Extended Access Management. Learn more at onepassword.com/macOSKen. This show is also sponsored by Incogni. Get 60% off an annual plan with code macOSKen at incogni.com/macOSKen. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media. Online at backbeatmedia.com. You can reach me a couple of ways. Info at macosken.com or call 716-780-4080. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Ciao.